station gets me through the work week.
And we don't just show love to the callers. We see the comments and the posts, too. I'm always on the go. So being able to watch all my favorite hosts on 910 AM mobile app is amazing. So when you think of 910 AM Superstation, we want you to tune in, call in, and don't forget to find us on social media. 3, 2, 1. You are listening to 910 AM Superstation. The future radio. You are listening to 910 AM Superstation. The best in the city. The future radio. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media, WFDF Farmington Hills, Detroit. 910 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media.
And good morning. You're listening to Robert Ficano. This is Sunday at Superstation 910 AM. Again, you can always call us at 313-778-7600. And in the studio today, we'll be talking about a few issues. I have Commissioner Willie Burton as with us. Willie, welcome.
Good morning. How you doing?
And Scotty Boman, who is a professor extraordinaire at Wayne County Community College, Macomb Community College, and teaches a subject that I stayed away from, probably shouldn't have, but with physics and things like that, but he's also very, very politically active as well. Scotty, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
So, first of all, happy Father's Day to everybody out there. I know it never receives as much attention as Mother's Day, but Father's Day is something that is important to all of us because even if we don't have kids, we've had fathers, and it's something that you think about. I'm very, very blessed. My father's 88 years old, still with us. Lost my mom a few years ago. So my dad is someone very, very special in my life. I talk to him every day, try to keep in communication with him. He's one of those old Italian guys that wants to remain independent. He still drives, and he can drive, which is a good part, and keeps his doctor's appointments and everything else, and still likes to cook, and that certainly helps from my standpoint. So anyway, Scotty, happy Father's Day, and also to Willie. Willie, I know you have no children, but you think of your father, I'm sure. Is your father still with us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, my father, passed away in 2009. But I mean, he was one of those guys, man, that was very hard working, and he valued education. My father was an engineer, and
was he? Where was he an engineer?
For Ford Motor Company.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was very strict when we were coming up.
Scotty, how about you?
Well, I have two beautiful canine American children. I have my baby Harry, who's a little Yorkie, and
okay.
I have Elsa, who's
you
also
said canine.
a Yorkie.
I wasn't sure what you were talking about, but go ahead. Okay. And what's the name of the other one?
Elsa and Harry.
Okay. Is your father still
They're
with
both
us?
royalty, by the way. It's Prince Harry and the Princess Elsa.
Oh, okay. Well,
Rosen. Yeah.
We'll make sure we remember that. Is your father still with us?
No, he passed on in the early 90s, and I think about him every year, or actually every day, really.
Yeah.
Not just every, but every day. But yeah, he's with me in spirit.
Yeah. Well, you talk about parents, they're usually a great inspiration. And my father, he was a maintenance worker his whole life, and he wanted to make sure that my life was going to be better than his, although he met all his bills and did everything, the right way. But he wanted to make sure I was going to go to college. He was going to make sure that I made it through, and fortunate enough, not only college, but law school as well. So to all the fathers out there, happy Father's Day. It's something that's special. Enjoy it. If you don't have your father with you, think about all that they've done for you and contributed, and also for all of you that have children. I'm sure you're going to be sharing it as well as they wish you a happy Father's Day. on this day, and we should do it more than just once, once a day out of the year. So it makes a difference. Anyway, some things that have come up this week that have been very, very interesting. First of all, the announcement with Ford Motor Company and what they're doing in Corktown and with the train station. Any thoughts on that? Both newspapers today, I think, have a major article on Bill Ford and what he looked at and what he's planning to do. And it's interesting. Ford is expanding locally all over. I mean, obviously with the train station, today he sort of said he's hoping that Dan Gilbert fills in some of the neighborhoods on the side there. It's interesting. And sort of buried in the articles, too, though, is they're going to be looking for the same tax breaks that the others have gotten on their property as well. And some of that has caused controversy. One of the major tax breaks that the state of Michigan has passed is that the state income tax that normally is collected on any employee in the project, instead of going to the state and then perhaps then redistributing it in a tax credit type way, it goes directly to the employer or to the developer. And they get to use it, and it can go, I think, up to 20 years in order to do that. And so I'm not sure. I'm lost in all this, but apparently Ford is going to be applying, I believe, for those type of tax breaks as well. Everybody else has gotten them, so I'm sure they're looking at it and saying, okay, well, if we're going to do this development, that we're entitled to get them as well. That's part of it. So that hasn't gone through as much in the message, but you got to congratulate them because they're building, and they're going to build in Corktown. What is also interesting, though, is that Ford Motor Company, if you know a part of what's going on in Dearborn, has taken over some parts of Fairlane Mall that they're converting over for a number of construction projects. They're also building a lot of expansion space on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn as well. Some of the storefronts and things that they've taken over, and they're building there too. So Ford Motor Company is investing a lot in southeastern Michigan and Dearborn, Detroit, which is deeply appreciated, and realizing that they're looking at the autonomous car as and the reason why they want to go into Corktown is they feel that it's going to draw a lot of young people to be in there, engineers and things such as that. Interesting, I mean, and you got to subtly notice this. There was a huge article that General Motors was featured in this week saying, oh, look at us and all the Millenniums that we have. We have them downtown already, and look at the engineers that we have that are going and things such as that. So General Motors is raising its hand and says, okay, that's great. There's a lot of publicity there, and they're doing a good job, but don't forget that we're here as well in the things that we're doing. Any thoughts on the tax breaks, gentlemen, that looks like it's going to follow with Corktown?
Well, I really personally have a problem with giving special breaks to businesses from taxes that not everybody is eligible for. If there's going to be tax reductions across the board based upon without having to pick and choose which businesses get them, that's fine. I'm all for that. But when we have special favoritism where some businesses, because what that really is a tax on the other businesses, because if they're going to have a certain amount of tax revenue planned, and then they're going to give one business a break, that seems to me that that's a justification then for keeping taxes higher on the other businesses rather than giving everybody a break.
Yeah, one of the issues that always comes up with it is, if the developer is strong enough, why is there a need for the tax break? Will they still bring the jobs? In this case, is Ford transferring the jobs from Dearborn? I mean, is it just going from one location to another? We don't know. And are they just trying to, are they recruiting? Let's face it, if you're looking at phase 2, 2.0, starting over again for the automotive industry, and they're trying to look down to the future. I mean, that's why I think Ford Motor Company changed CEOs. Mark Fields was, removed, and a new CEO was put in, and I think a lot of it has to do with the autonomous vehicle and things like that Ford Motor Company is looking at. And they want to be competitive. General Motors seems to be leaping in that direction. I can't tell what Chrysler's doing with it. I think they're probably trying to do it as well. It's interesting though, but they're taking the approach that and they're getting some help from Washington in terms of the EPA and the mileage standards and everything else. So that means that Ford and a lot of them are eliminating the sedans. They're mostly going to be making trucks and SUVs and things such as that, which is an interesting strategy as long as the gas prices stay low. If they suddenly were to spike up, people just naturally go towards smaller cars, which are sedans and things like that. So a lot of this is in juggle and play. And ultimately, I think what I see, and I saw it as county exec, is this corridor is going to be developed along Michigan Avenue. You're going to see it develop with Corktown, downtown Detroit, Midtown, and all that. But then it's going to go up Michigan Avenue. You're going to have Dearborn, which is going to have the center of Ford Motor Company and its actual headquarters that are there. You got a world-class airport, and then you're going to go all the way up through Ann Arbor, University of Michigan. You got one of the most prestigious universities that are on there. So it's going to be interesting what happens and what they're doing with it, and eventually with the Ford Motor Company.
You know, it's always great to see development, it taking place in your city. I mean, just looking at the whole Port Town community, you have a lot of families that's been over there for years, and it was good to, it's always good to see what they was going to do with that new train, well, the old train station or whatnot. So turn that into a headquarters and create some jobs and things for for young professionals and families. It's gonna be good to see. But also I hear there's gonna be a park or something coming.
A park in that area.
Yeah.
Part of the community benefits, I'm sure, of trying to develop that is some of those type of things are going to happen. One of the questions some of the Free Press editorial people are questioning is, are the Maroon family getting off too light? Here they bought this thing and they put, they changed the windows and some other things that they're doing with it. They're probably going to make out pretty well on this, because by the time it's bought and sold, Ford Motor Company is going to have to invest a lot. They said they want suppliers to come in and to surround them and things like that. So actually they've come out of this pretty well. The Maroon family is trying to change their image. Let's face it, it was negative for a number of years because of fighting over the bridge and some of the other things that occurred with it. And I think you're starting to see an attempt of rehabilitation in what they're starting to do. There's nothing wrong with second chances. And if they want to step up and they want to, put money into the community as well, I think they should be applauded for that. In this particular case, they hung on to this. There was a vision with the train station, but I think eventually it's going to be changed in terms of Ford Motor Company. Obviously, there's going to be a big game changer when they come in over here.
We know the train station has a new home.
I have fond memories of the place. I remember going there when I was going to Western Michigan and Kalamazoo, going there to catch the Amtrak and taking it to school and coming back and walking into that great big lobby with a large kind of pew-like benches in there.
Yeah, Ford Motor Company is going to have I think 3 or 4 days, or a couple days at least, that the public can go in and look at it before all the reconstruction starts on it and things like that. So that's going to be interesting. If people have memories of it, they can go ahead and go through it and see what it's like and what that's going to be changed over eventually with that. Well, there's a lot of local action that's going on as well. One of the things that was just brought up that people may not be aware of is there is a charter amendment on the ballot for the city of Detroit, which involves commissioners that would be elected and changing the actual charter of the city of Detroit. I don't think there's been any, or very little coverage, if any, on it, and it could have dramatic effect on the way the city is run. So I think you're both familiar with it. One of the things that was an outgrowth of the last charter reform was the police commission, and actually taking over and giving civilian control, or oversight, I should say, over the police department. We just saw that Commissioner Burton is where, and we talked a little bit about it off air, where there was a instance where you had two police officers. They were working off duty, which is allowed, which is permitted under the contract and the agreement. And at that point, there was a confrontation, and the chief wanted to suspend the two officers without pay. The commission looked at it, and I think it was a 9-1 or 10-1 vote, that they said no. They thought that the person was the aggressor to the police officer, and that the police officer's pay should not be suspended until there was an actual determination of what really happened. Willie, I don't know if you want to expand on that. Go ahead.
Sure, I would love to. You know, it was a situation where we had a Detroit Police Department commander, which was Commander Leach at the time, who got demoted to the rank of lieutenant. And it was a situation that took place at a restaurant where he had a security company, and apparently, you know, somebody had too many drinks or whatnot, but according to the video that we saw, it was actually two videos that was shown to the Detroit Board of Police Commissioners, and the video did not show that Lieutenant Leach was the aggressor whatsoever. But what it did show is that Lieutenant Leach were talking to the person that had, you know, quite a few drinks or whatnot, and the guy had his hand on his shoulder, and
then his hand on the shoulder.
You know, the patron.
Okay.
And so he put his hand on the officer's shoulder, and then he kind of struck him, you know, with his hand, like he's pushing him away, but when you review it, it looks like it was like he hit him. And so it was like
the patron hit the officer?
The patron hit the officer, and it was an upper swing. And so it either could have been like a hard push, or could have actually been a hit. But anyway, I thought he did a great job as far as the way he...
You're talking about the officer?
The officer did a great job as far as, you know, getting him, you know, towards the exit, to move towards the exit. But we was only shown two videos. And the two videos that we saw was from the inside. So according to what we saw, the Board of Police Commissioner made the right decision. We're talking about suspending the officer without pay, you know, without having a due process. You know, where's the officer due process? So I think that was a good move that that was made by myself and, you know, my colleagues. Or to suspend the officer with pay, opposing the chief's recommendation was to suspend without pay. The officer, you know, has been charged, but the charge is not, you know,
there's not been a determination.
He haven't been found guilty, so anybody can be found. You know, anybody can have a charge pending, but it doesn't mean that the person is necessarily guilty. And officers entitled to a due process.
Now, wasn't there other video, but they didn't show the commission the other video?
Well, my understanding is that, you know, there was two videos that were shown to the commissioners, but the record is sealed, and based off of what's sealed, it was just.
Is that sealed by the prosecutor or sealed by the police department?
You know, that's I have to get back with you on that one. You know, we get about 12 or 1,400 cases, and it's just, you know, 12 to 1,400 cases, but I definitely got to look back in that one. So
yeah, if there is a video of the officer being over-aggressive, and you're asking for suspension of the officer's pay, I would presume that video also would be made available to the commission to say, okay, here's why we want you to take this particular action. If it's not shown, and the only thing you're shown is that the patron's being the aggressor and is the one that's, you know, accelerating the confrontation and things like that, you got to taking the judgment, was there appropriate force used for what the circumstances were and things like that. But at this point, apparently there wasn't enough information given to the commission to say he should be suspended with pay. He's still being suspended, but with or without pay. He's still being suspended, but it's with pay until there's an actual determination. Now, they brought charges against him as well.
Yeah, but he haven't been found guilty, and you know, he's entitled to a due process, just like any other citizen. So
Sure.
we see what happens after August.
And we applaud the DRACO applaud the work that commissioners like Willie Burton is doing, providing civilian oversight to the Detroit Police Department. And we're especially concerned about this charter vote because it's unfortunate that it really has not received as much attention as it should.
I'll tell you what,
probably...
Scotty, we're going to go to break, and we're going to get into that as soon as we get back from the break and talk about the proposed charter amendment that's going to be on to the city of Detroit that could change things such as the oversight of the police commission. Be right back.
Every weeknight at 9 p.m. is something new and something fresh.
This is Todd Corser, and I want you to check out my show. Listen in and call every week as we explore government and hot topics. Tune in, raw and uncut.
This is attorney Michael Schwartz at 9:10 a.m. Superstation, and you can hear me every Tuesday night starting at 9 p.m.
Hello, Detroit. This is attorney Crystal Crittenden, and please tune in to my new show, The Truth Matters, on 9:10 a.m. Superstation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Charlene Mitchell, your host of Mind Your Business. Listen to my show live every Thursday from 9 to 11 p.m.
I'm Reverend Maya Walisa Reynolds, inviting you to listen to Mama Maya Speaks Friday evenings from 9 until 11 p.m., discussing education, motivation, and inspiration on Superstation 9:10 a.m.
Different names, different voices, but the same energy. 9:10 a.m. Superstation, the voice of Detroit. 9:10 a.m. Superstation, giving you exactly what you need by any means necessary.
And sports reporter Shay Norley. And Shay, Kelly tells me this morning that we are possibly in for a PGA tournament in Detroit.
This is great. The PGA is in negotiations to bring a tournament to the city of Detroit. It'd be the first tournament to be held in Detroit, probably in 2019, at the Detroit Golf Club. First PGA tournament played within the city limits. This is all, anonymous sources kind of discussion at this level, but would be a pretty cool, groundbreaking event.
And that's a beautiful course out there.
Yeah.
It would be, I think it would be fabulous for the city. For golf, and Detroit Golf Club's a beautiful course, private course. I couldn't imagine a better place.
Yeah, and, these events bring a ton of economic activity around
They
them.
do, really do.
9:10 a.m. Superstation. We are the future of radio.
Who said that? Me, down here.
What are you, a yellow booger?
I'm a banana slug, Steven.
Well, what are you doing in my room?
I'm your sensitive venture. Don't you remember me? Don't you know that we miss you?
Miss me? Who misses me?
You know, all your friends in the forest. The trees, the pond, that little fort that you've made out of branches. We all miss you.
Mom took me to the forest last year.
I'm a slug, Steven. It took me a long time to get here.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
The forest is not that far away. Have an adventure today. I'm sure your mom would take you.
You're right. I should get out. I want to have fun. Play in puddles, catch frogs, and climb trees. Hey, Mom!
Jan! Steven! What is that in your hand?
It's my sense of adventure, Mom. It's telling me we need to get out of the house and have some fun in nature today.
Come to the forest where the more adventurous you lives. Check out discovertheforest.org for cool places nearby. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
And good morning. You're listening to Robert Ficano. We have some of our guests here with us in the studio. Commissioner Willie Burton from the Police Commission. We have our professor here, Scotty Boman. We have a special guest that we're going to introduce in a minute here. Since it's Father's Day, and some of the special things that go on within the Detroit community and what we're able to do. But we started to get into, just initially start, that I think a lot of people are not aware of the charter amendment vote that is coming up in August. There would be commissioners that would be voted, and then they could, in essence, start to change the charter of the city of Detroit. One of the reforms that came out of the last one was the police commission that was set up. They're elected officials that have oversight over the police department, and one of the issues that might start to come up is, are they going to eliminate the police commission and go back to the old way that they used to run it? So, Scotty, you were starting to talk about it and what it involves.
Yeah, I think this is probably the most important vote in the city of Detroit because it can restructure the entire government. It's gotten absolutely no attention. So people are going to get ballots in the mail, and many of them won't even have heard of it until they see the ballot. And there'll be a yes or no vote on revising the charter again, which just got revised in 2012, and the results were the election that we had in 2013. To revise it again after such a short time isn't really giving enough chance for the new one to work, in my personal opinion. As director of DRACO, I'm concerned very much
explain
about
what that is.
Detroit Residents Advancing Civilian Oversight. And after the new charter had given us an elected police commission, I found that very few people had heard about what the police commission was, that it's a civilian oversight board and is not just a review board that rubber stamps things. It is not a branch of the police department, that they have specific duties that are especially critical at a time when we hear complaints about police brutality or allegations of police brutality that require a proper investigation by a neutral authority. And here we have a commission now where at least some of the members are elected by the people, others appointed by the mayor, where at least on a district-by-district basis, people have a direct input into whom some of their commissioners are. When this comes up to a vote, what will happen is all of this will be on the table. It'll be wide open. We don't know how people are going to vote, and we have not heard anything from the rest of the media on who the candidates are. Now, I have a list of candidates, but I had to call up the city clerk office and ask. They didn't even have this listed on the website, but they did tell me that we have Emily Dabish, Graham Davis, Michael Griffey, Taylor Harrell, Marissa Holmes, Larry Hughes, Quincy Jones, Richard Mack, Denzel Anton McCampbell, Byron Desiderm, Tracy Peters, Nicole Snell, Joanna Underwood, Carol Weaver, and Barbara Ann Widner. We need to vet the candidates and find out what their views are on important issues like continuing the elected Board of Police Commissioners and other things that concern you in the event it does pass. I think it's kind of a wild card, and it'd be risky to pass it, and I'm voting against it personally. But whatever your views are, you should at least want to be informed on what these people will do if it passes also, because they get chosen in the August primary as well. If they're the only candidates.
19 candidates, and how many positions are there?
9.
9. So 9 people. So it could, in theory, they could change how the city council, whether they come from districts or they be citywide again. In theory, they could make those kind of changes again, couldn't they?
Yes, they could, and the voters so far have mostly heard nothing about them.
I'll be truthful, and I follow politics quite closely. I wasn't aware that this charter amendment was coming up for vote in the city of Detroit with it, and it'd be interesting if you go back to the old way. There would not be, if, let's say they change the police commission, you would be eliminating then the police commission, and in essence you would have the mayor and the police chief then having the direct control over the police department.
I think in 2012 when the charter changed to give the police board of commissioners more oversight and control with the Detroit Police Department, I think that the residents wanted to see more oversight from the from the Detroit Police Department. I think changing the charter now and after the voters have spoke loudly, if they wanted more oversight, I think we moving in the wrong direction there. Our office takes in anywhere from 1,200 to 1,400 complaints, per year, and so we working. But
Okay. Well, we have a couple callers before we get to our Father's Day guest over here. Jerry, you're on with us here at 9:10 a.m. You can call us at 313-778-7600. Jerry, you're on.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Robert Ficano. Thank you for taking my call, and good morning to your distinguished guests, and happy Father's Day to all of you.
You too, Jerry.
In the meantime, I miss the deep voice, Mr. Keith Williams.
Keith's in church this morning.
Deep voice. Anyway, Mr. Robert Ficano, I know you don't have leaders in your with you in your show today, but
toxic. Any source who dump toxics in our backyard is a no-no. And I heard some story, Mr. Ficano, and I don't know if you know about it, in the local news. They mentioned that the Ford Motor Company was caught dumping some toxics somewhere in our backyard. So I wonder if your guests, if they heard about it, I would love to hear the answer. Don't you think toxic is a hazard for our nation?
Yeah, I'm not sure where that might have happened, Jerry. I mean, obviously, Ford Motor Company with the Rouge Complex is a very, very environmentally sensitive place. I know that Bill Ford, currently head of Ford Motor Company, has been known for his environmental sensitivity issues. If you go to the factory, it has green roofs and everything else. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
Excuse me, thank you. Mr. Ficano, I don't think the local news, like 2 or 4 or 7, they will air some news if they were not sure about it. So I don't know if you didn't hear about it. Do you think your distinguished guests, any of them have a knowledge? And I would love to hear their answer about the dumping toxic, which is no and not acceptable. Thank you for taking my call, and I will hear you, and God bless you.
Okay, you too. Thanks, Jerry. Happy Father's Day. Go ahead. Has anybody heard? I haven't heard about any toxic dumped by Ford Motor Company. Have any?
I haven't.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to determine. Okay, we have a couple other callers. Real quick, Valerie, you're on with us on 910 AM Superstation. Valerie?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Great topic. Happy Father's Day to everyone.
Thank you.
Those there as well as out in the world here. I'm curious about the charter. First of all, it is in the old charter, just written in that it will be open, it shall be open at this date. Most of us that carry the charter understand the charter, but also understand that the charter is very rarely supported and followed. Didn't look at that part of the charter. It is actually written into the charter this passed and implemented in 2012, I believe. I am opposed to the charter being open. We have not implemented all of the parts of the new charter that we just presently are supposed to be operating on.
What haven't we implemented yet, Valerie? Do you know?
Oh no, each of the districts, for instance, does not have a financial advisory board. Okay, a commission or whatever it's called. Now I know that only one district has one that's presently operating, and that's District 7. There are a number of things we simply don't follow due to the fact that we were operating under a financial review board or a commission or whatever it's called now. And even though we stated, we know that they so-called gave us back our power and control of the city, that commission is still there. And they, at any time, if the city goes in any way that's not in lockstep with what they want to see Minnesota, how they want them to go, they can always come back for the next, I don't say the next 15 years. We have an oversight committee that's sort of lurking over us. We need to, first of all, actually implement all of the other approved charter mandates. We need to follow the charter, and the people are not advised. The only people that were initially listed to that even pulled petitions to run on the charter in November. The people that are running will not be running until November. The only thing that will be on the charter in August will be, do you want to have the charter open up and to be changed? Do you want the charter commission approved, or do you not want to have the charter open up now? So it's going to be a vote up and vote down. The actual people running for charter commission will not be on the ballot until November.
That's not correct.
Valerie, it seems
no, they will be the only candidates chosen in the August primary. they will not actually be officers unless the charter revision is approved. Effectively, it just becomes empty offices. But if the charter revision is approved, the people elected in August, the top 9 candidates, will be on that commission. They will not be on the November ballot. So people need to get it together now. The people that might be the complacency that people fall into is they think, oh, well, I'll get to vet these people between now and November. No, you won't.
Okay.
You have from now until the election in August to vet them.
Okay, I'm not certain who I'm speaking to right now. Who is talking?
This is Scotty Boman, and I'm getting my information after having read the section of the charter that addresses this, because I was frankly surprised. Like, I wanted to know who's behind this. Oh, this thing is up for a vote. And I'm like, I look and I go, well, what's behind it is the 2012 charter. It says it's going to be up for a vote because I guess they wanted to have like a short, there may have been people saying, well, we don't know how it's going to work. Let's give it a trial run or something. And so they decided they're going to have a up or down vote on it in 2018. And, I mean, and so.
Scotty, I know who you are. You're attorney Scotty Boman, right?
No. He's a professor at Wayne County Community College.
Okay, I do know who you are, but I spoke directly several times with Winfrey, and I attended the meeting when the discussion, it was a discussion and the approval of the 15 people that are running. Now, they need 18. So in order for the people to even be elected to be members of the upcoming possible charter commission in November, they need to figure out a way in which they can find 3 more people, because state law prevents them from having that election until at least twice the number of people that are supposed to win are actually considered. So what we need to do possibly is go back, talk to the election commission. They will talk to you. They will talk to me. But I got my information directly from Janice Winfrey and the election commission, which is, and they basically
all right. You know what, Val, we'll seek clarification on that and see what there is. We appreciate you calling in very, very much. We have some other callers.
Well, I'm glad that you opened this up because it does need to be explained to the people. Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. John, you're on with us here at 9:10 a.m.
Good morning, Mr. Ficano, and happy Father's Day to all you guys.
You too. How's the U.S. Postal Service doing?
Oh, you check out that article in the Detroit News today about the Postal Service. We may be the biggest fentanyl dealers in the world.
I didn't see that.
In the Detroit News, but I've been knowing this for years because they get packages we have untracked from China, not required, no scan required. UPS, FedEx, and DHL all have. They can't do it. So the Postal Service may be it's an old story, but I know about it. Anyway, I want to get down to this charter. Okay, these elected people, they might push through. So these are people that are outside of the police agency. They may be able to investigate the police agency for wrongdoing. Is that how I understand it?
No, there's a charter commission set up now under the Detroit Charter. It's, how many people are on it, Willie? 11? I can't remember.
Board of Police Commissioners.
Board of Police Commissioners, 7 that's elected by districts and 4 appointed by the mayor.
Yeah, so there's 11 of them on, 7 by districts, 4 appointed by the mayor. And they currently have oversight on the police. In theory, I know Chief Craig and those, they actually, for some of their policy decisions, have to go up to the police commission and say, here's what we're implementing. And then it gets approved or disapproved. A lot of discipline goes up eventually to the civilian oversight board, to this board as well. And it initially wasn't implemented because under the bankruptcy and under the emergency manager, they blocked it. It finally, once those impediments were removed, the commission finally took full effect. But for the first couple of years, even though the charter had been revised and they said this Board of Police Commissioners existed, because of the emergency manager and bankruptcy, it wasn't implemented. In essence, the court suspended its power, and it eventually has come back now. It's fully implemented in terms of its power.
Okay. So what we're trying to do is I guess, clean up the local level here. Have some outside agencies vet the corruption, but that leads all the way up to Washington. Now, what's going on with the FBI and all them in the Department of Justice is they're just trying to take down Trump, and we can see that from here.
Well, John, that's interesting. John, that's interesting. That report by the IG that came out on the FBI and what they did. I mean, ultimately, what they did was they helped Trump in the election. It's pretty well acknowledged that they had Weiner's computer for 30 days. They didn't do anything with it. And then all of a sudden, 5 days, I forget how long, a week and a half before 10 days before the election, Comey comes out and he says, oh, look what I got to open up this investigation. It's probably going to take us beyond the election. And then miraculously, 4 days later, they said there was nothing on it. All of that planted the seeds, and really, I think part of the downturn was for Hillary at that point. People, if they were undecided, said, you know what, I'm not going to go with her because of just these kind of issues. And Comey did it completely. I think that really, in the end, that helped Donald Trump more than it did anything to, and it hurt Hillary Clinton.
Well, Comey indicted Hillary Clinton every 6 days but Sunday, but then he turned around and said it wasn't indictable. But then they turned...
But John, the problem you have is that Comey himself was using private email, and here he's investigating Hillary, and she has private email, but the investigator himself was engaged in some of the same practice.
Exactly. Well, that's just they're circling the wagons around each other. And if you look at some of them emails that come out, the Strzok and Strzok, whatever, they didn't want Trump, so it was the FBI in collusion to try to stop a duly elected official. So this is very should be very alarming to everybody that wants to vote and thinks their vote's going to count or it don't count. When you got a deep state against the people or against the people's candidate, we got a problem. Everybody knows Trump had to take on 16 Republicans. They didn't think he was going to get it. And Hillary only had 30, and he was never going to get in, regardless of how the people voted. So we need to have more information out there. That's all. And you guys have happy Father's Day.
Okay, you too, John. Thanks for calling in. Okay, why don't we introduce our guests? We have a couple callers. We're asking you to hold on. We'll get to our guest here. Now let the commissioner introduce him.
We have my good friend over here to my right, Adam Hollier, from he lives in District 5.
Yeah, I live in the 5th House, or I live in the 5th Council District. I live in the 2nd Senate District. All kinds of. I live in the 13th.
We have a Detroiter, but it's Father's Day. I know on Mother's Day we had you and your wife here. Father's Day, and there's unique challenges to people that live in Detroit. If you're a father, and people, we get so caught up in the politics, realizing that fathers have to get up every day and do things with not only their spouses if they're married, but their children, and run every day. We think that everybody's following the political news as it goes, and really, people are just trying to live their lives, and they want a better quality of life in the city of Detroit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's funny that you talk about living your life and being a dad. So I told Willie I'd be here at 8, but as I was walking out the door, Lillian told me that she needed to be changed. So, so I did that and then headed up here. But, having a little person changes your entire life. And so the last couple of weeks, it's been, right on the tip of my forefront as we continue to think about it. Lillian's 6 months old, and it's super exciting. But I emceed a daddy-daughter dance in Highland Park last week. And, it's this whole room full of young men, young black men for the most part, who were out with their daughter and taking their daughters on their very first date and training them and teaching them what they should expect out of men. And it was just an incredible thing. And I always joke because we look at Mother's and Father's Day completely different, right? So
Yeah.
on Mother's Day.
Father's Day does not get quite the same attention as Mother's Day.
I mean, we were here on Mother's Day. On Mother's Day, people only wanted to talk about Mother's Day. It was, hey, Mother's Day, oh, congratulations, my mom is amazing. On Father's Day, and I appreciate people saying Happy Father's Day, but they say Happy Father's Day either at the end of what they wanted to talk about, or they're like, hey, guys, Happy Father's Day. What I really wanted to talk about is so-and-so and so-and-so. And then half of the other conversation is, hey, wouldn't our country be better if more dads were involved, more fathers? It's like, whoa. Today, let's just say, hey, you're a good dad. Thanks for being a good dad. Or, hey, you know what? I appreciate that you have a kid. You should be, way to go.
Yeah, and the roles have really started to evolve out where fathers, and those of us that have had children know that fathers are just as important as mothers, but mothers have always been the rock of the family. I heard it once described that the mother is the glue that holds the family together, and the father is important and can become part of that glue as well. To make sure that the children are raised and you become part of their life. And, You know, I talk to my daughter every day. My son I don't talk to every day, but you know, he's at least once or twice a week we talk, and it's important. And they're older now; they're adults, and they seem to appreciate it. You think sometimes that you're talking to a wall, and none of this is being absorbed. But it's amazing. All suddenly, 20 years later, they're repeating some of the same stuff that you said to them. And it's part of, raising a family. And a father is an important part of that raising of the family as well, to be involved in their child's life.
Yeah, no question. And I think as we talk about it, dads are playing a bigger role, and we're starting to have more discussion about it. So, like, my wife didn't have any paternity leave, but I had 4 weeks of paternity leave. And there was a big article this last week talking about companies really stepping up and providing more paternity leave so they have more bonding time. And so as my wife transitioned back to work, I was able to spend time with our daughter.
That's neat. Yeah, it was almost the reverse. You didn't.
Yeah.
It's usually the reverse. Okay, we have a couple callers. We're going to be getting to you. Brian, you're on with us here at 9:10 a.m.
Hey, how you doing, Bob? Happy
Good.
Father's Day.
You too.
All the fathers, nation and out there. I want to say, and I got 8 kids, so you know I'm a father 8 times.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. Oh yeah, man. So listen, I think that was very important what he said. I talked, hey Bob, try to talk to your son more and more, man. I know you say a couple times a week, but let me tell you something. It's so hard nowadays with communication. I think there's a lack of communication, and hopefully we can get it back together. And in conversation, if people really thought about it, to get these kids, you had to talk from the beginning to me. You should be able to talk in the end. So I just want to say there's a conscious thought to all the fathers and the mothers that's
well, Brian, there is, but the open communication is even better now. For example, with my own son, I can text him. I text him now. He won't be at work. He won't always be able to pick up the phone, but he can respond to a text. And with the media, if I see an article, I saw an article yesterday. I sent it both to my son and my daughter. Where in the past you might have had to call them up and say, go and try to find this article and stuff. I'm able to send it to them, and it engages more of the conversation about us as a family. And so the modern communication in ways are links that help at least with the kids when they're adults.
Yeah, I guess what? And I found this out just based off of 910 and, communication back and forth over the different shows. One of the hosts one time said something that he did, and he started reaching out first to just sit down and talk to his kid. And I started doing that, and I found out my 16-year-old, the last one, I got 5 boys. I got 5 girls and 3 boys, and my youngest is 16. And I started reaching out to just say, hey, talk to me about whatever you want. And it's amazing what you will find out if you give them the open door and let them know it don't matter what they tell you, you'll find out. But on the last note, Bob, very seriously, I personally, after my experience, either in Nova or Detroit, doesn't matter, the commission that's established to either review the police or whatever, I don't honestly understand why it's there. I started to reach out. Me and Willie Burton talked maybe one time on the phone with a few people at the same time, but it wasn't the proper forum for me to talk to him because it was a conference call. But I honestly don't think it should be established because they come up with the same thing. If you got a complaint against the officers, they're going to say they can't find any wrongdoing or anything. And my case was so particular. I talked to you one time a long time ago about it. But 2 white officers should never get away with removing a person illegally out of their business, their establishment. It happened pretty much to me and Donnell Smalls, but mine was much different. Donnell was downtown. I just happened to be on Grand River in Greenfield. So shout out to 910, man. Happy Father's Day. We're going to talk about it, but the commission shouldn't even be there because they don't do anything. And I'm just saying that because I've watched it. I've seen it personally, and if I came in there.
Well, we have Commissioner Burton right here, so thanks for
Commissioner Burton is there.
Yeah.
How you doing?
This is Brian Jones. I ain't gonna say my label. You know who I am by just saying me, you, Sam, my man that used to be on the fire commissioner, and Mary Waters. We was on a conference call at one time. That's Brian Jones.
Okay, well,
how you doing?
I think Commissioner Burton's going to defend a little bit what the commission actually
I want to hear what he got to say.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I just want to say that when I first came on, we had citizens complaint forms, and it was like a little piece of paper, and just say if you had a issue with an officer, you can actually get a citizen's complaint form from that officer against his partner. But what was the likelihood that he was going to give you a citizen complaint form to write up his partner? So
no, Mr. Burton, let me do it this way for you so we can take it another facet. Well, first
no, hold on, let me finish, please. I want to hear what you got to say to him. Please let me share this because this is a great, this is a great day that, we got this dialogue. But, one of the things that I've done was to see that we get those citizens complaint forms online on the City of Detroit's website. So when you go to the City of Detroit's website, which is detroitmi.gov, you click on the Board of Police Commissioners, you can actually make a complaint right there. And the complaint will be investigated or looked into for that matter. But we do have OCI, which is Office of the Chief Investigator. So we got like 26 investigators assigned to the Board of Police Commissioners. They go through those complaints, and then off the merit of the complaints that they share it with the commissioners for review. And as we look at the Sure, go ahead.
Burton, you're giving me the playbook. I'm trying to show you that playbook does not work, and it's the standard. I've been I tried to tell you who I am. First of all, let's do it like this so I can respect you to showing everything. It doesn't work because in the outcome, in every event, I've watched this. Citizens complaint. That's why Al, when he called in about the citizens and the citizens' complaints and concerns, they're not addressed. And I can me personally, I'm ready to write down something and call you so I can show you just how devious it works. Two white officers should never be able to come in somebody's establishment and walk them out and threaten them to do whatever if they don't lead their own business, brother, and you lose your company over this. And I'm telling you, and it's not only documented, you got other officers that says this gentleman was treated that way, and they put 4 blacks versus 2 whites, and I still lost. It ain't over, though, but I'm going to sue the city, and it's going to be embarrassment.
And you may, Brian, you might be successful in the city, but the officers are following a procedural protocol that
set up by policy. Procedure, Bob. They wasn't even entitled. They wasn't even a sheriff. They wasn't even a bailiff. An officer don't even have the right to evict you. Listen, any one of y'all that's sitting there know, I not only know the law, an officer can only assist the bailiff. I wasn't even evicted properly. I wasn't even up for eviction. They did it because of your buddies down there, man. When they got that power, they do what they want to do, and they wanted my building. I was in a mall, brother. They wanted my 3,200 square feet.
Well, every case, is not brought before the commissioner. So there's a lot of things that are happening every day, and
did you file a complaint, Brian? Did you file a complaint with the police commissioner?
I talked personally to an investigator. He talked to one witness out of, hold on, brother, listen, everybody knows. That's like you talking to Dody in the background and saying, oh, you talk to Brian. Everybody in Detroit know who I am about that ball. Oh, brother, this is going to be big when it's over. When it's all said and done, I'm going to have their hands on a platter. 2 white officers, brother, they thank God. And I'm going to say this, and I mean it. They thank God. God changed my heart, and that's all I'm going to say. Because I couldn't have cared about them being no officers, brother.
The Board of Police Commissioners, we meet every Thursday, so we'll be at police headquarters Thursday at 1301 3rd Street, Detroit, Michigan 48226. And our meeting is at 3 o'clock. It's open to the public. Let's have this discussion there. I'd love for you to come and raise your concerns before the full commissioners, because I don't think everybody may be aware of your story here. But, if you do have a complaint you want to make against the police department, you're more than entitled to make it there. And someone from our office will look into that. But
Scotty, do you want to?
Yeah, I want to interject that. The complaint you have is actually why an elected Board of Police Commissioners is so important, not a reason to get rid of it. Because what we have here is it sounds, if you don't have them, then you have no recourse, and you're left with effectively well, yeah, but which if you have a lawyer willing to take it, and if you think the courts are actually going to take your side, which is really a long shot. But with the whole problem is because we have an elected board of police commissioners, and if we can keep it, then what happens is if you see their commissioners aren't doing anything, if indeed you have a legitimate complaint and they're not following up, and other people have the same experience, then we can put people in who do something. But if you don't have a board, then you're guaranteed they will do nothing because they won't exist.
Okay. Theo, you're on with us here at 9:10 a.m.
And before we go into Theo, I just want to say this too. You know, I'm probably about the only commissioner on this board that stood up to Chief James Craig when he was talking about arming some teachers with guns. I also stood up to the
but
police.
See, that kind of policy would have to go through the board. No, it would. And at that point, I mean, but that's some of the counterbalance that we're talking about. If most of the citizens or teachers and stuff say we don't want this, the police department, you know, is pushing it. The commission would actually have to make an official policy.
The Board of Education would have to do it. I think that's a long pull. But Bob, I also want to say this too. You know, when you had the Detroit Police Department was serving on a Detroit Fugitive Apprehension Task Force, where that killed an unarmed man. You know, I also want to ask the chief to come before the board. Actually, some of the chiefs come before the board to talk about the role of DPD on this Fugitive Apprehension Task Force. So, in a way, you know, you do want to have an elected police commission board because, we get, these different nature, these concerns, come before us quite often. So.
Okay, Theo, we want to get to you before the break. Theo, you're on with us here at 9:10.
Thank you. Happy Sunday to you. If the charter is opened, the police commission is out. Vote no for the opening of the Detroit City Charter. Also, if you open it, you will end up with a dictator as mayor of the city of Detroit. So, Brian, be careful for what you wish for.
Say it again. Say it again.
Theo, are you active politically on the Charter Commission situation?
Yes, I am.
Is that Theo Broughton?
That's correct. Good research. And we do not want the city charter to be opened. This a problem that we had with it being opened earlier has caused some problems in itself. We don't want it to get any worse. So vote no for that.
Here's what I'm trying to figure out, Theo. If this does this completely open the whole charter? So I mean, in theory, they can say that now the city council is now going back to citywide elections versus districts and things like that.
We could. If this charter's open, they could do all kind of crazy things with it.
They could make it better too.
Huh?
I don't think so.
Make it better too, right? We can
leave it.
They're going to have to go in with a scalpel.
Yeah, Lord.
Don't tweak it. Leave it alone.
Okay, Theo, thanks for calling. Rick, we're going to get to you after the break. We have to go to break. Theo, thanks for calling in. Rick, hold on. We're going to get to you right after the break.
This is Reverend Sharpton, and on the last Keeping It Real with Reverend Al Sharpton, Ricky, you're Keeping It Real with Al Sharpton this Father's Day weekend. I had a great dad. He was there. He was a trash man. it hurt him because of the simple fact that I didn't finish school. I've done well in my life, don't get me wrong, but I had to use the common sense that he taught me. Wonderful dad. He's not with me any longer, but I still carry those things that he taught me, and I just passed on to my son what my dad taught me. He's got his bachelor's degree. He's working at a hospital that's going to pay 90% of his master's degree. Rev, it's just an honor to talk to you, and I finally got in.
Well, I'm glad you got in, and I'm glad to hear your story.
When are we going to get serious?
Keep it real, daily, with me, Al Sharpton.
Home, life, and auto. Claims that are unfortunately routinely denied by insurance companies. Since 1996, I have successfully represented thousands of victims whose insurance claims were denied. If I can be of service to you, call me, Attorney Carl Collins III.
Who else but 910 AM can give you this much excitement, this much flavor, this much fun?
I go get work done on my house. Crew come in. One man, he set down the tools, bring everything in. The guy that was with them, my granddaughter that came, she was over here for the summer. She came downstairs, and she's 14. She said, Granny, can I have some pie? I said, sure. She goes back upstairs. The guy that was with the guy that was working, going to do the work on the house, he literally almost broke his neck. Following my granddaughter with his eyes and neck. I stopped. I said, what is your problem? And so the other guy was like, why are you going off on him like that? I said, because that's a child. That's my granddaughter. That's a little girl. Regardless how she looks, you know she's a teenager. You can look at her in her face and tell she's a teenager. But you don't care. You look at her body. So you need to pack up all y'all stuff and get the hell out of my house. And he was telling me I was wrong. He was saying that I was overreacting. I said, no, I'm not overreacting. Your dude got a problem.
910 AM Superstation. We are the future of radio. 910 AM Superstation is in a league of its own. We are the only talk radio station in the Metro Detroit area sensitive to the African American community.
Make sure you join us on what station?
910 AM, the Superstation.
910 AM.
910 AM.
On 910 AM Superstation.
910 AM Superstation, Metro Detroit's only African American based talk radio station. Stay up to date with current events and breaking news on our Facebook page. Search and like 910 AM Superstation on Facebook, and you'll see everything new, everything exciting, and all things Detroit. 910 AM Superstation News on Facebook Live right now. If the conversation is hot and the lines are jammed, give us a try at 313-778-7600 or 313-778-7601. That's 313-778-7600 or 313-778-7601.
910 Superstation is off the shizzing.
910 AM Superstation is the voice of Detroit, and we want to hear what you have to say by any means necessary. We're the hottest station in town. Whatever you need, it's right here on 910 AM Superstation. The most powerful voices in the urban community.
3, 2, 1.
You are listening to 910 AM Superstation. The future of radio. You are listening to 910 AM Superstation.
The best in the city.
The future of radio. WFDF Farmington Hills, Detroit. 910 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media.
And good morning. You're listening to Robert Ficano. We're on for the next hour here, 910 AM Superstation. You can call us at 313-778-7600. That's 313-778-7600. We have a studio full here. One of the issues that's now come up, and it's Father's Day, is about the Charter Commission and the vote that's going to happen in August, which a lot of people are not aware of, that it could change the dynamics of, again, the Charter and the city of Detroit and how it's run, and including whether you have an elected police commission by the people that will have the impact on policy with the Detroit Police Department and things such as that. That's probably one of the most well-known changes from the last Charter Commission, was that the district council by district and by the police commission being set up as well. Rick, thanks for holding on through the break. You're on with us here at 910 AM Superstation.
Hey, good morning to you and the guests. And I somewhat have a question for the commissioner on this one. It was very timely to, hear him on the air. As you already know, I'm with Make3.com, and we do a lot of personal claim, individual claim collection, and I'm a little bit concerned about these fees for filing complaints. I've got sick, okay, actual people. You know, 3 were stop and frisk scenario, which I think we also need to talk about raising the criteria for a stop and frisk. Maybe we need to get a little bit past, you know, he's 6
Rick, technically under the Supreme Court, stop and frisk is an issue for the protection of the officer, technically, the way it's supposed to be implemented. But go ahead, go ahead.
You're right, and I do have sympathy for that, but and I do want to hear, though, from the people who are impacted with those contacts, because people will be people, and one fee in particular, that $40. Another thing I would like to look at, and I hope that you would consider, and that is authorizing civilians to assist with complaint handling for filing. You see, I think there we would be able to get a handle on the information and put the information to use in a time when information technology is the norm of the day. It would seem only reasonable that we would pursue every opportunity to maximize the use of the information that we have.
Rick, on some of that, though, if it's a complaint, it's like anything else. It doesn't, I'm not saying whether it's true or not true, but if it's not true, and you have just, you know, people handling it in a very loose manner, suddenly, you know, that kind of stuff can be leaked to the press. Somebody's reputation suddenly could be impacted on somebody just filing a complaint. And if it was never true, you could, right or wrong, you can impact the you know, the reputation of the officer.
Let me throw this in here on a value equation. So we would go out of our way to make sure that we protect even the implication of wrongdoing of one, but on the other, we will err on the side of caution and just, you know, do them any kind of way and give them no protections and not consider them in that. I think, you know, like I said, I think both parties deserve protection, and
Absolutely.
In this case,
absolutely,
it's about protection of both. We don't want the citizen either fronted on the street. In the case of Wayne State University and a couple other areas, where you're stopping people who attend school there, who, you know, on the street in front of other students that you're going through backpacks, and you tell them somebody got robbed, and you fit the description of what this guy has on is you know, I mean, he has a backpack, okay?
You know,
that backpack piece, I know is getting to be an issue, but go ahead. I'm sorry. Now, I hear you want to get in there.
You know, I'm with you on that one. I'm totally against the whole stop and frisk thing, you know, because it can also lead to racial profiling, as we saw what occurred in New York. But one of the things that the Police Board of Commissioners has done, we had voted on our officers to wear body-worn cameras, you know, so we want to see what the officers see when they out in the field, especially when these complaints come before the BOPC.
That makes all the sense in the world. I think, you know, to me, like I said, I think these officers do, you know, a tough job. I do think, though, irregardless if you're talking about the tough people or the very smart people, we have to work together in a way to kind of keep just human egos and tendencies in check a little bit. And I think it gives all of us comfort to know at least what we're going through, what's happening to us is being, you know, rightly acknowledged. You know, I think that's a big part of it. And I think we give people that feeling as though it's them against, you know, a whole program. And I just don't think that that's fair for the system that we elect and support to insulate itself so far that, you know, it becomes, you know, it causes the rest of us to have no redress in so many of those cases.
You know, what you have to be careful, Rick, what you got to be careful of, and I know stop and frisk, and I know Commissioner Burton and I might have a little bit of a difference on some of this, is that the way it was conducted in New York and the way it eventually went, you can't just pull people out of a car and stop and frisk them and things like that, where there's real aggressive police action. But the original intent, and it was under a Supreme Court case, I think Terry, it's called the Terry case that was out of Ohio, is that if a police officer is in a situation where they know that there's a high crime rate, high crime area, they're confronting an unusual situation. The stop and frisk was always put there for the protection of the officer, that they could stop and frisk for a weapon,
but Bob,
so that the officer is protected.
But Bob, are the police officers going to stop and frisk those downtown Detroit or midtown, or is these going to be primarily African Americans going to be stop and frisk? You know,
if you target it, you can take any tool and target it the way it shouldn't be used. You can take any tool and do that. Okay?
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
Can I add one thing? I mean, you guys got the whole show. Let me just talk about the effects of bullying and intimidation. These officers would do better. That's bad to live with. Think about it. In school, you got people bullying you. You know what I mean? That whole thing. I think one of the areas that we certainly could look at in there is to, try to, do a little bit better with it. I know it's hard, particularly with what we pay and, the training required, et cetera, but we have to look at that. I think there's so much there that fuses people to, not want police protection, which is an error in itself. So May3.com, guys. Thank you.
Okay,
I think his point was well received when he talked about bullying, when he talked about intimidation. So I'll be 33 this year. I'm 32. When I played PAL, most PAL teams had police officers on the coaching staff. And when you talk about the difference between PAL today and PAL 20, 30, 40 years ago, PAL had a lot more police officer involvement, and they had those positive interactions. So on a day like Father's Day, when we talk about that, you had all these really good relationships with with
more
police
role
officers.
models than you do today.
But also you have people who were going to look out for you, right? And so you may not have known the police officer who was messing with you, but that other kid was like, oh, man, you played for Cubs, you played for the Jets, you played for so-and-so. Oh, man, that's so-and-so. Leave him alone. And I think when we talk about those spaces, we need to get back to having that type of community involvement and engagement.
And what we've seen, too, over the past 2 years, 3 years, is there's been such a visceral reaction for when police do abuse, their authority and what they do. But the problem is that's probably less than 5%, 4% of really the police officers. And if they do something wrong, I have not seen a police chief or anybody else who hasn't said, hold them accountable. If they've done something wrong, you go after them and you hold them accountable. The other thing, though, what plays into some of this, you're not able to recruit everybody that you want. Let's face it, what you're paying police officers is very difficult. There is vacancies throughout the state of Michigan, but especially Detroit, Wayne County Sheriff's Department. It's really difficult to recruit and to get everybody that you want and that law enforcement.
As far as recruitment-wise, I mean, we bring in on 30 new officers a month, but
how many are you losing?
But we losing probably about 18 officers a month through our attrition, 18 to 20 officers a month through our attrition. But
we got better training, we got better officers.
Exactly.
Other people want them.
So we got some of the best officers that you can have. But when you're starting off, when the starting pay, when I came on was $31,000 for officers. We voted on a 4% pay raise. I took their pay raise to like 36 cents or change. It's 37 and something now. But you got the city of Warren that say, hey, our doors are open. We honoring lateral transfers. Starting pay is $54,000. How are you going to keep an officer in the city of Detroit?
And here's one of the issues that always comes up that people don't recognize. You can train an officer unlimited amount of time. The distinction is if you have an officer that's been through school or part of, and whether you like it or not, if they've gone through college, and they recognize it on corrections, they make you take 15 college credits before you can apply to be a correctional officer. If you don't, and you can be trained, that 5 seconds, that 4 seconds, with the person that actually has those 15 college credits and things like that, that's where the real discretion comes in. You can be trained, and you're trained to react to certain things as you see it. It's the analytical process that starts to happen in those 4 or 5 seconds that says, I go this way or that way. And if you're just trained to react a certain way, that's where sometimes you just get into trouble. I'm not making myself as clear, but that the college education is something that makes a difference in that police officer in the discretion that they use. It's just more discretion and common. I don't want to use the word common sense, but the circumstances that tell them, no matter what my training, I use it. But at the same time, something for example, somebody has a permit to carry, and so if I see a gun in a car, I'm trained to react a certain way. But knowing that they have a permit to carry, and if you analyze it and use it, it gives you that 3 or 4 seconds to make an analysis that, this person probably has the right to have that gun in the car.
In that case, it's incumbent on the driver to immediately inform the officer they have a permit to carry.
We know what the law says. I'm saying the actual 3 or 4 seconds is the discretion of that officer in making the decision. The college education helps.
Just do the whole side. I mean, as a black man, as your first thought to a police officer, you just got pulled over. Hey, just so you know, I have a gun in my car. Your first thought is, hey, all right, I'm here. Here are my hands. Where am I? Yeah. We got to be real with what people are dealing with and what they got to deal with that.
Okay, we have several callers, and we're going to get to Dan from Crime Stoppers in a few minutes. Here, Jesse, you're on with us here at 9:10 a.m. I go through the whole panel, but we got 4 of us in here.
Yeah, good morning, Bob, Ficano, and your guest. You seem to be running right over, you talking about original Supreme Court on stop and frisk. And when Benny was running for mayor, that fall, New York ruled against stop and frisk.
That's right.
And I asked Benny Napoleon, what was the Detroit police policy? He was unable to answer. I guess that's why he's not mayor now. But here's the thing. Before the Supreme Court decision, whenever it was, police first job was slave catchers. So, number one, right now, in Detroit, you got stop and frisk. Now, if an officer is afraid, then he should go find him another job or go to another city. It's a different situation. You can't, you're not helpful in what you're talking about dealing with the Supreme Court deal, okay?
I want to.
But I'm telling you how the stop and frisk evolved in terms of the Constitution.
When was that decision?
I don't know, 70s. I'm not sure when it was.
No, but I want to. I just want to jump in for 2 seconds, Mr. Hooper. We do. I mean, when I'm in a community, I do hear people say, "Yeah, we was pulled over, we was stopped, and we was frisked." But hold on a sec. Okay. But let me say.
During the OJ trial, you find out when you was under arrest. If they slap handcuff, your ass is under arrest.
But let me say this: for those that complain, do not make their complaint before the Board of Police Commissioners. So it's almost like we don't even hear about it. We don't even know about it. But if you look at what comes before the Board of Police Commissioners, we don't really hear anything about stop and frisk. But we do have officers wearing body-worn cameras. Whenever a complaint is made, we would look at the dashboard camera as well as the body-worn camera. And that would be brought before OCI, and they were presented to the Board of Police Commissioners. But we do not get complaints, or we get very little complaints like this.
If you file a complaint, at that point, the police officer has to articulate the reason for not only the stop, which, people say they make it up for the blinker off or the light off or whatever it is. But at the same time, but at that point, any stop and frisk, they got to articulate what they felt the danger was that they actually did that. That's where the police board of commissioners would come in and say, okay, articulate why you felt you were in danger. What were the things that you saw that was, giving you the feeling that there was danger?
That's right.
And what's going on and things like that. It makes a big difference if you actually get it in front of a neutral body that's able to determine it. Yeah, if you file it with the police department and it goes no further, I'm not saying whether they bury it or don't bury it, it's not going to get the same review as with the police commission. for them to look at it is be part of that. Okay,
That's right. That's right.
We have a number of callers. Dave, you're on with us here at 910A.
My advice: do not get rid of your elected police board of commissioners.
Okay. There's a little bit of self-interest.
Sounds real self-serving.
Okay, Dave, you're on with us here.
Yeah, you know, man, I really feel that you guys, and I'm not feel, but you guys are intentionally, are totally ineffective. And I think that you guys are counter effective in this policy in bringing a peaceful solution. When I hear my antennas go up, I with you and the other gentlemen, my antennas are, I've seen this damn movie before. I've seen this movie. There's no way in hell am I going to allow any more pollution to go down in the black community. There's not unilaterally equal in the white community. If I'm black, whites engage in the crime rate just as much or even more. Drugs, pedophilia, even more than black Americans. And yet when this police shit comes down, it always falls on our back and neck. I don't see police pull a white man out of the car and saying, you know what I'm saying? You look like a pedophile. You got to report on a pedophile. And you take that description. Never have I seen that. Never even in drug situation, even high crime rate. The white man always chooses to target like we do.
Well, let me intervene real quick.
There's always been a racial line to it. And you know what? How do the police can afford a conviction or the OIG so on their own, they were able to weed out that police? No. There's higher process, to hire these hillbillies, to hire these racists, to hire these decent people to come to our community and commit mayhem on us, okay? I'm not saying for that shit. I'm saying this. There's more cameras than ever before. Detroit is still a major black city, okay? There's more cameras out there. And once somebody gets a camera and this shit hit the fan, you're going to be able to call it that.
You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dave. I believe there's more African American police officers now in the city of Detroit than historically there probably has been. I don't know what the percentage is, but there's quite a few that's out there.
That's true.
I'm not sure if it meant. You're absolutely right. The police department cannot look like an occupying army in the community. If it does, they're going to lose the trust of the community in what is setting up. The tension you have is that there may be police officers that don't do the right thing, and if they don't, you got to get the complaint in front of an independent body. The old days of just filing the complaint with the police department, that's fine if that's the initial step, but then you got to bring it, if you don't get satisfaction from it, you bring it to an independent commission, such as what Willie Burton
Let's ring the bell.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to intervene real quick for 2 seconds. We do have the Detroit Police Department does have an app. It's called DPD Connect. You can make anonymous a tip there. Also, you can also find out your neighborhood police officer as your MPO. I like for the community to get plugged into those community relations meetings. Talk to your captain and commander. Get to know them. Let them know some of your concerns, because a lot of issues could be addressed at the precinct level prior to coming to the Board of Police Commissioners.
Okay. Dave, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it. We got to go to break here. We'll be right back.
Every weeknight at 9 p.m. is something new and something fresh.
This is Todd Corser, and I want you to check out my show. Listen in and call every week as we explore government and hot topics. Tune in, raw and uncut.
This is Attorney Michael Schwartz at 910 AM Superstation, and you can hear me every Tuesday night starting at 9 p.m.
Hello, Detroit. This is Attorney Crystal Crittenden, and please tune in to my new show, The Truth Matters, on 910 AM Superstation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Charlene Mitchell, your host of Mind Your Business. Listen to my show live every Thursday from 9 to 11 p.m.
I'm Reverend Maya Walisa Reynolds, inviting you to listen to Mama Maya Speaks, Friday evenings from 9 until 11 p.m., discussing education, motivation, and inspiration on Superstation 910 AM.
Different names, different voices, but the same energy. 910 AM Superstation, the voice of Detroit.
We're joined now by our regular Monday morning guest, Jan Livingood from Crane's Detroit Business. Chad, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Nolan.
Morning to you, Chad. Chad, so what do you think, where do we go from here on transit? I know that's an issue.
Yeah, at this point, the Regional Transit Authority, as it's conceived, doesn't seem like it's going to get off the ground because of the fervent opposition from Macomb County Executive Mark Hackle and Oakland County Executive Phil Patterson. It seems that now it's probably a time where they're going to have to go back to the legislature and either ask for some type of amending legislation to the RTA that will satisfy the suburban leaders, or amend the law that create the smart bus system to make that system better and more reliable for long-term investment.
910 AM Superstation. We are the future of radio.
Morning, and you're listening to 910 AM Superstation. My name's Robert Ficano. We're here with a number of guests that are with us in the studio. Before we get to anything, Scotty wanted to thank Valerie because he was able to research, and Scotty, tell us what you found out.
Yeah, I really appreciate when someone helps teach me some things, and Valerie was right. It turns out, first of all, I had just simply miscounted the number of candidates. There were 15. The second thing was, indeed, when I read more carefully, sure, the charter candidate revision commission candidates are nullified if the measure fails, and if it passes, some of them are seated, but apparently there is still a vote in the general election where we could pick from those 15 people if they, which apparently I guess they would automatically then make it through the primary. So I stand corrected, and I think this is all about educating the public and making informed decisions. And so I definitely, and that part of that means a willingness to admit when I made a mistake. And of course, the problem is that we even have to do this digging on our own, though we all should. That this has not been getting the attention that it deserves. Both from our city clerk should really be informing people in a way more public way than us needing to make phone calls. It should be also in the local press. This should be part of the discourse, and I think right now we got that discourse going, and that's what's important.
Okay, well, next, Willie, you want to bring on our next guest?
We got DiBardino.
Okay, from Crime Stoppers. Dan, you're on with us here at 910 AM. We're talking about police. We're talking about it's evolved to some stop and frisk, but also your organization, Crime Stoppers, is trying to make an impact in southeastern Michigan, and in particular in the city of Detroit. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, good morning, gentlemen. First of all, Bob, Willie, and your guests, happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
It's a wonderful day for fathers, and I'll tell you, listening to the show this morning, one of your callers talked about community involvement and what we need to do to keep everything above board. And of course, that's exactly what Crime Stoppers, our mission is to engage the public and the community in the 7 counties that we serve, all the way from Monroe all the way up to Walston, all the way over to St. Clair, to get involved in order to help solve crime, to help our law enforcement partners, and to keep all of us safe in our communities.
Okay, fantastic. Is there any big ones right now in the city of Detroit that you're trying to solve?
You know, Bob, I'll tell you, we handle somewhere in the vicinity of about 7,500, as you well know, because your department, when you were sheriff, we're certainly still involved with Wayne County and always have been. We are involved with about 7,500 requests, either from family or from the law enforcement community to help, and our help involves engaging our machinery, and our machinery is communicating with the public via a vast number of tools in the social in social outreach, in the presentations that we do, in creating posters, in doing public press conferences every week and so forth. And I couldn't be happier. Last year we took in almost 5,200 anonymous calls, and I heard one of your callers talking about the suburbs and the city and so forth. What's very interesting about our calls is, and people are really astounded to hear this, but last year 5,200 anonymous calls, 51% of those calls happened to be from the suburbs. So we are getting calls from all 7 counties, and sometimes people think that we are only interested in the most horrendous crime, that being homicide, and that in and of itself isn't true. We get involved with animal cruelty. If you remember that case where somebody cut the ears and the nose off a dog and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
We were involved with that case. We were involved with a case recently where somebody beat up with a baseball bat 10 new kittens. We're involved with vandalism. We were involved with that young man who just got found that apparently, according to the law enforcement community, committed suicide, and any number of cases, particularly some of the more horrendous cases in Detroit, without question, but also missing people and things of that nature.
And we appreciate it. What an organization like Crime Stoppers, and I know in certain urban areas and stuff, there's a difficulty sometimes with trusting the police and things like that. Do you help this type of organization help build trust within the community for police and the community to at least start to open up more?
We do. The two biggest things that we try to work on every day, Bob, and it's interesting you talk about that in terms of not only trust with the police department, but also trust with us. I mean, first of all, we are an independent, nonprofit 501c3 organization. We are not owned, operated, or involved with any organization other than ourselves. People talk in terms of how do I know your organization talks about anonymity and so forth. How do we know that we're going to remain anonymous? Well, the figures tell the story. The last 5 years, we've taken in over 28,000 anonymous calls from all over Southeast Michigan, including obviously Wayne County. 28,000. Not one of those callers have ever been identified. When they call Crime Stoppers, first of all, the calls and or the emails are accepted in Dallas, Texas. We don't even take the calls here.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Dallas, Texas. We don't have caller ID. We don't have the police involved. We don't try to get IP addresses. We do none of it. It comes up here. We look at the tip. We make sure that, and by the way, the tipster, when they call, they're given a 5-digit number. That's how they're identified, because people always ask, how can we pay rewards out to people if we don't know who they are? It's because they identify themselves with a 5-digit number. And interestingly enough, when you call 1-800-SPEAK-UP and you say, hey, my neighbor is such and such and doing such and such, our callers will stop you, because just by you saying my neighbor, that means they can therefore identify you, because you're going to tell who your neighbor is. We won't even take those phone calls. We direct them to the police department. And sometimes the caller gets angry, but we say, look, we can't do it. We're very sorry. So we give them this 5-digit number, and then as the tip is being processed by the law enforcement community, whether it be the federal, state, or local police departments or police agencies, the caller can call into our number, our local number, which they're given, and just say, this is tipster 12345. How's my tip coming along? If the tip results in an arrest, doesn't have to be a conviction, doesn't have to be anything other than an arrest, the tipster calls and says, how's my tip coming along? And our reward court which is an independent body that reviews the tips and it reviews the information that's provided by the law enforcement community as to how effective that tip was. They and they alone decide that they're going to issue a tip for reward money, if you will, and they use a metric to do so. Even and I'm the president and CEO of Crime Stoppers, I don't authorize rewards. It's all done through an independent body of business people, lawyers, and so forth. They get together once a month and do that.
Well, this is interesting information, then. We have a couple callers here. Brian, you're on with us here at 9:10 a.m. the Superstation. Brian, you're on.
I'm back on because this is interesting. The gentleman that's on the phone, is Matt a Crime Stopper your supervisor, or you over him?
I'm sorry, no, they're an independent 501c3, independent nonprofit.
So Matt and you guys are separate?
No, the caller is, I'm sorry, the individual is named Dan that's on the air with us from Crime Stoppers.
I know. I'm asking him. He's in Crime Stoppers. As soon as I said Matt, he should know who Matt is. I asked him, was Matt his supervisor? Was he's Matt's supervisor? And he said something about, no, they're independent.
Oh, I see. I see. Yes.
Now, once again.
Matt works in an organization. Yes, correct. He works for me.
I say that to the listeners because when I say I know everybody in Detroit or I know who, Crime Stoppers, honestly, they do it this way. When a crime in Detroit and there's known cases, once it gets to the officers or whatever, then the officers tell it don't forget their family members. So that's like officers finds out something and he kids in their bed over this. Now I mean I'm telling you the truth. This is gonna come out. And it's gonna come out big times. Once again, and to guys,
Brian, you're in a bad cell. You keep breaking up.
Okay, can you hear me? I know you can hear me now.
Okay.
Rob. Willie, Burton, look up 1026.
Brian, we can't hear you.
Brian, you're breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
No. I can't hear the caller at all, Bob.
Yeah, you're fading in and out. Brian, call us right back, and if you have a landline, use that. If not, call us back on your cell, would you? Okay, Dan, I'm not sure where he was going with it, but he's calling back, and we'll see what he, eventually comes with. I think he was alluding to that the police officers are the ones that help direct Crime Stoppers a little bit. I'm not sure where he was going with that.
Yeah, well, I hope he does come back on. The police officers have nothing to do with the Crime Stoppers at all, and certainly I would know that running the organization. We work with over 200 law enforcement agencies, from the U.S. Marshals all the way down to the Department of Natural Resources, and I can assure you guys, and you and Willie certainly know this, but for all your callers as well, there is no law enforcement agency that runs our organization. Our organization, I have nothing to do with being directed by anybody. As a matter of fact, we often try to direct the law enforcement community as to what to do with some of these tips. So it's the other way. But I would like to, if I can get just a minute or more, besides talking about the tips and the 28,000 tips we've taken we're celebrating, by the way, our 25th year.
Congratulations.
So
Congratulations.
Thank you very, very much. And it's very, very gratifying with the hundreds of thousands of families that we have helped just to be the voice of reason and the voice of hope for them, and bringing together the law enforcement community to help them. It's a wonderful thing. But I want to say just one more thing, because I think people are always confused and very interested in this. People sometimes ask us, why is it? Because we do a lot of presentations. I spoke in the last 2 weeks. I probably spoke to 7 organizations at night on the weekend to just explain what our program is and why people can use it and how they use it. And some of the questions that come up involve the value of the tips. In other words, people say, why would you offer a $25,000 tip to a dog situation that lost its ears and lost its nose, and yet we have a young person who maybe was killed somewhere in Southeast Michigan, and you offer $2,500. So let me just explain that very simply. Crime Stoppers, because we have to function on on funding that's given to us by basically by our corporate friends, and the law enforcement people try to help us out as best they can. We only pay a reward up to $2,500, and we do that only for homicides. The difference is that people, we have what's called the joint reward, where if one of your children was kidnapped or your grandmother was robbed and so forth, we offer X amount of dollars. We use the metric, but people can join the reward. For example, the reward,
they can increase it if they want to, right? A family can.
Absolutely. Like in this case, people that are friends of the Michigan Humane Society, they put in money, and that's why the reward was $2,500. So
that's a
we
good
don't
explanation.
value things differently.
Okay, then we have Brian back on the phone. Brian, you're back on with us here. Brian?
All right, can you hear me good now?
We hear you better.
Yes.
All right, this is Willie, Burton, and Theo. Since they brag about this commission, look up case 17-1026. Mr. Burton, 17-1026. I got the phone number. I'll call you Monday. You tell me what time to call you and give you time to look that up. 17-1026. And it's amazing how, I'm just being honest. I'm like Rick, because me and Rick talk offline all the time. The advocacy for the people is nothing. I mean, here's a perfect case. This is an example. I mean, my business was torn apart by 2 white officers. I should have beat them down, but I didn't. I did. I obeyed the law and did what they told me to do. These guys had no legal authority to do anything they did. When you read this, it's devastating. I tell the attorneys just taking the time on it, but it's filed, and we're going to go after the city. And civil rights violation. This is the worst. It's a civil rights violation. And when y'all speak about it, and Theo, no, I don't care commission. And anybody in Detroit, they don't believe in the police. I was left off before I got interrupted by my phone. So, to tell the police anything in Detroit. Okay. I mean, nobody. Why? Because the police tell whoever it is, and then that victim ends up dead. There's a lot of cases like that, and then they go unsolved. And that when you talk to deep people, we call it barbershop. It's the truth. Look how y'all hear the part of Detroit and a girl in the bed.
Okay, Brian, I'll tell you what. If there is a concern, and your phone's breaking up again, number one, you have recourse. I mean, civil rights attorneys and things, if you feel there was abuse by police, civil rights attorneys and things like that are willing to, take on the city of Detroit and Detroit Police Department if they feel that legitimately there was, a civil rights violation in what was happening with it. You still have the recourse with the police commission as well that is part of this in what they do.
I want to say something too, Bob. When you look on the news and you see what's going on in other cities and states, we don't really have or experience as much problem as other cities and other states. But we do have a civilian oversight board that's here, that's always, willing to listen to the community and their concerns. So, got a police department that's in place. We get, one of the best things came out of the emergency management, where we got a good chief, and one of the good things that came out of the 2012 charter, you got a good police board of commissioners. So, so
there are positives that have happened from it. There's no
from
doubt
both
about
ends.
that. Correct. Yeah. Something real quick to bring up as well, and since we have an expert on fitness and not only physical fitness, I guess, and I'm shifting over just real quick a little bit, is we've seen some celebrity suicides in the past 2 weeks. I hate to say it, but celebrity-driven copycat situations sometimes start to catch fire, unfortunately. And what I get concerned about is that young people see that, look, these highly visible, successful people committed suicide. And they say in Michigan, in the past 5 years, suicides are up like 30% in our area. Just throwing it out to the panel here, is there a way to start to address this and to make it so unattractive? Or, how do people, when I was growing up, it was nothing that was, there wasn't a way out for people to look at. I mean, you knew sometimes that it occurred and something like that, but it seems to have picked up to a celebrity status a little bit, especially in the past couple of weeks when you see some high-profile people that did it.
Well, I used to be on the board of a community mental health agency, and obviously my wife is a clinical psychologist, so I've got enough information to be dangerous in this space. But when we talk about, suicide and suicide prevention, a lot of it deals with coping mechanisms, and we don't do a good enough job of teaching resiliency training. So I'm a commissioned officer in the Army, and one of the things that has been a big emphasis on the military over the last decade has been a program that they call the Master Resiliency School. And so in that, they're helping to build resiliency in young soldiers and leaders so that they interact with them differently than you might see in a movie from Vietnam area, where it's not that denigration space, but where they're saying, hey, you need to build these coping mechanisms. You need to understand how to deal with the trials and tribulations and the rough patches in life. But depression is widespread. A number of people are dealing with it, particularly these days, but it's having someone who's able to make that intervention and help them move forward.
There's a distinction, and people don't get it sometimes, between mental illness and mental health.
Yeah.
And mental health can be is broad-based. I mean, it can impact on a lot of people and coping. What are some of the coping mechanisms that they've taught you from the service?
So, I mean, one of the things that they talk about is you're not thinking that you're a bad person, right? So when bad things happen to you, if you internalize them with the idea that, hey, this bad thing happened because, Bob's a terrible person and because, everybody hates Bob, versus, oh, bad things happen. This was a bad day. I move on. I can move on beyond that. That makes a big difference. Having strong personal relationships with people that you can continue to talk to, right? So having a relationship with Willie where you can say, hey, I feel heard. I'm having this issue. How do we go do with that? But also physical health is really important to mental health. So the overall stronger you are physically, the stronger you're going to be mentally, and vice versa. We need to be well-rounded individuals that have purpose in our lives.
I think a lot of people don't realize the physical ability, the physical wellness does have an impact on your state of mind and what you feel like, and even how you approach your job someday.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when we talk about people who have persistent back pain, who have trouble standing up, when we talk about those things, yeah, obviously they're going to be more depressed because they can't get out and go enjoy the sun. They can't get out and do some of these things. So we got to make sure that we try and build that well-rounded individual, particularly in schools. So children who, as we talk about children having more ADHD, as we talk about more depression in schools, a lot of that has to do with children not having opportunities to be successful, right? So that kid who, is an amazing artist, if there's no art in school, they do not have an outlet that they feel successful in. If there are no opportunities for them to be successful, but also to fail early, right? So people hate the gym rope, but being able to climb the gym rope and not being able to do with it, and realizing that the world's not going to end, that just because they couldn't do that one thing, and recognizing that early is really critical for children. And it's particularly critical for soldiers as they, go through a lot of those things. So in the military, we do a lot of these obstacles as confidence builders. Like, they are not just so you can climb up and over. It is so that you know that this thing that you could not do before, if you are taught the right way to do it, you will be successful accomplishing.
Willie, is there resiliency that they try to implement with the Detroit Police Department? Being a police officer, at times, you do not want the syndrome that it's you against the world. In some of the classes I teach, I always tell the students that your only friends should not be other police officers. Mm-hmm. It should be other people that you engage with and who you're able to talk with and things like that. And when I was sheriff, we tried to encourage people not just always go to the bar with the police officers and deputies and things like that, to spread it out and to get other family members and get others that could be involved in it and things such as that. I don't know if Detroit has a similar type program or not.
Detroit has, several different programs. One of the things that, they have it where you can sit down, you can talk with the chief, an assistant chief, but also like what they've done for us with our fitness as well as they started the DPD Connect. I mean, not DPD Connect. The DPD Fit. Coming in with the healthcare providers.
We've always tried to provide other mechanisms besides. One of the hard parts was, and I'm sure it is in the military too, going up to a command officer and telling them your problems sometimes is really hard to do.
Oh yeah,
I mean to relate to it. You might be able to do it with a colleague of the same level that you're with. And it's little things. We found out like where the location was, if they needed some help. If it was on a certain floor, and people see on the elevator that they're going up to that floor, everybody's, oh yeah, look where he's going or she's going, and things like that. Eliminate it, put it off site, and where the privacy they could go and get the help and things such as that. Things that you don't pay attention to necessarily that have a big impact in discouraging people what they do or don't do.
The department has the core program, and it's made up of different officers or whatever, where they can talk to each other, type situations, almost like sort of like a board or a committee or whatever. But right now, that core program is being revamped. So I don't know if you all heard anything about the core program, but anyway, when John Bennett was on the Detroit Police Department, he was out of number 7. He was actually part of the core, but right now I think is being revamped at this point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what name they're going to bring it back under, but there is some concerns whether it was working or wasn't working. I think John Bennett said that, he saw some different issues with it, but what I did find out that the officers find it very helpful to come to a commissioner and more so to talking to each other. So, that was something that I was...
One example I can point to that when I was sheriff, it was 255, which is a tragic flooding. A lot of the deputies had to go out there and, for lack of a better term, body parts, and everything was just blown to hell that was out there. So, at the end of it, we had everybody in the room, and we said we have counselors if anybody feels they need to talk to somebody for what they saw and everything else. It's interesting, if you ask for a show of hands, how many of you want to go, them in front of their colleagues and stuff, nobody would raise their hand. So you know what we did? We ordered everybody to go. And that way there was no embarrassment, what they felt was embarrassment and things like that. It's sometimes thinking outside the box that gets you to the point of trying to help and run a more efficient department. Rick, we have some callers. Rick, you're on with us here at 9:10 a.m. Superstation.
Yes, we just reach for a point of clarity with the coping, because it is very important that we teach that type of resilience, but we should not confuse coping and advocacy. There's nothing wrong with pursuing and having emotion about what has happened to you and being committed to getting resolution. And sometimes that gets mixed in this, and we don't really have a place for the people who need to connect with peer groups of others with similar experience. We don't set that up. How many times have we referred a person talking about even a police complaint just because you guys are, related to that? Let's send them over to this group where there are individuals who also have been impacted by this very same issue, perhaps over an extended period of time. I just wanted to put that in there because when I hear it oftentimes brought up, it's brought up with the type of passivity that says to a person, don't spend your whole life maybe pursuing an ideal as a result of this experience. Cope and put it behind you. And I think we put a lot of situations in categories that they may not belong in terms of, life, death, and, as we live, our quality of life issues, etc. So thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Happy Father's Day. Okay, it is Father's Day, so we're going to go around and we're going to ask everybody for 1 minute what Father's Day means to you and your fondest memory. Dan, you're on the phone, so we're going to start with you. Dan? Okay. Well, we'll start with Scotty. Scotty, what's Father's Day mean for you?
Well, it's an important way for me to remember my father, and he actually, I think the last time I saw him before he died, because he died in July, not this year, but when 1992, was really after, right after Father's Day, and so we've gotten together and spent the whole day together. And just the way, how a good parent who walks you through things, kind of continues to live on inside you for the rest of your life, because they're a big influence on the future.
Okay. We do have Dan with us. Dan, you're on from Crime Stoppers. We're going through 1 minute what Father's Day means to you in terms of maybe your children or your own father.
Well, thank you. Yes, first of all, thank God for my father. Good guy. I grew up in a big Italian family, and my father was always there to take care of us, to lead us, to counsel us, and more importantly, to discipline us when we needed to be. And I have 3 kids now, and there's nothing that makes me more happy than a Father's Day when I get calls or letters from my kids saying, "Thank you, Dad. Thanks for being there." It's a wonderful feeling.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, let's go. Who wants to take it next?
Sure. So my dad, Carl Hollier, he was captain of the Detroit Fire Department, and he became a firefighter right the year I was born. So just an incredible guy. And when I think of dads, when I think of fathers, I think about him. I think about him teaching me how to be a man. I think about my first job. And
what was your first job?
So my first real job, I was Buzz Thomas's district director.
Oh, okay, sure.
But
I just saw Buzz the other day.
yeah. But when right out of grad school, I applied to be Burt Johnson's chief of staff, and Burt saw my dad's name, saw my last name on my resume. And he was like, "Are you Carl Holier's son?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Job's yours. If you're half the man he is, then I know you're going to be the man for the job." When I asked my father-in-law for permission to marry my wife, he said, "Yes, because I know your dad taught you how to be a man, and I don't have to." And so when I think about my dad, I think about the legacy that I was given and the name that he has. And I think that as a father, that's what I hope to do for my daughter. And I hope we think about today is that, fathers leave a legacy, and it's something that's critical for our children.
Absolutely.
Well,
I'm going to say that, my dad used to always say to me when I was coming up is to always be, strive towards excellence and, be the best you can be. And so my father was he was a proud man, but he was a leader. And so I miss my father. My father is no longer here, so he passed away in 2009. But but he was a great guy. So.
To finish it up, my father. What I think is remarkable, whenever I think there's difficulty in my life and stuff, I realize what he went through. He came to this country right after World War II. He was 14 years old by himself on a ship. His father was already here. He lost his mom during the war, during World War II. They always tell the story that there was supposed to be some guy, they gave him a little bit of money to watch after my dad. As soon as he got on the ship, he never saw him again. And it was 10 days to cross the ocean to get here. So when I think of the challenge that I have, that I've faced in my life, I say, my God, go to a new country. You're 14 years old. You just lost your mom, and your way of life, what it was, in Italy, is going to be completely different coming to this country, although it was opportunity for him. But the other part that really impressed me was his work ethic. Most of his life, he worked 2 jobs. And he would work his daytime. He started as a carpenter. He eventually became a maintenance man in the school system. He would work during the day in the maintenance job, and then he would take another job at a funeral home, for maintenance over there as well. And he did that like close to 25 or 30 years. And I was just amazed at that. And so when I think of challenges that I have, I'm going to see him today. I'm fortunate that he's still with us. He's 88. That his work ethic, his challenges, like I said, when I think that things get rough for me, I'm thinking, boy, he had a lot worse. And the other part, and what he drives, is that he wanted my life to be better than his was.
Yep.
And that's what he always drove for. So as fathers, we all have something to be thankful for. You try to pass it on to your own children. I remember I wrote my son a note when he graduated from college that I was able to help him with that gift of education. Now it's going to be his obligation for any of his children to pass on, the gift of education to his kids as well, generationally to keep going. So Father's Days are special days and ones that make a difference in all of our lives and the way that we have it set up. So It's been a very interesting 2 hours. I want to thank all our guests that were with us here today. We're about to wrap it up. Father's Day is a special day for, we happen to be all males on this panel here today. We have mostly all women on Mother's Day. So, you know, we try to be equal about it. But don't forget, especially if you have children, what role model you're playing, and at the same time, not to forget those that whose shoulders you stand on because you've been here. Have a great Father's Day, and thank you for listening to 910 Superstation. This is Robert Ficano, and we will be back with you next week.
Sundays on 910 AM Superstation is a collection of personalities like none other. Different names, different voices, but the same energy. Arise and shine, for your light is come.
This is Elena Herrera.
Morning, this is Robert Ficano.
The final call hour with Troy Muhammad on 910 AM.
We got the topics, the guests, the opinions, and the facts.
Hello, this is Angela Moore. Please join me from 3 to 5 p.m.
Be sure to catch Doing the D with Alexander Zonchek from 5 to 7 p.m.
Listen to your girl, Princess Leah, on the Leah Live Show.
Detroit, this is Michael M. Hotel, the African History Network show.
This Pastor Mo, a.k.a. the Street Preacher, a.k.a. the Street Sweeper, from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina, and join me every